There's a wonderful recording and piece of writing that I would recommend to all of you called A Rap on Race. Margaret Mead had never met James Baldwin, and at the end, when the fires of the civil rights movement the coals were finally gray, she wanted to reflect. And of all the people she could have chosen to reflect with, she chose James Baldwin. And it's an extraordinary piece of talking that I tripped upon when I was still trying to develop what I now do. Long time ago when I was working at KLM Airlines.
In the complaint department.
In the complaint department. And taking the crosstown bus over from Madison Avenue to get back to Amsterdam in 76, where I lived, and I stopped off at the Museum of Natural History, who knows why, and there was this 6-record set, records, called A Rap on Race of James Baldwin and Margaret Mead. And I had never heard anything that was such musical talking, other than FDR's Four Essential Human Freedoms, which is a waltz, really. And it is extraordinary to hear them talking and arguing and fighting. And then he, in the course of this, somewhere on side 4 of this thing, they talked for hours and hours and wrote it as a book of the transcript, Rap on Race. And at one point I learned both parts in order for Carnegie Hall. That's one of the things I was so terrified of doing. A very complex thing to learn. And at one point he's, she's yelling at him, and, he just says, if I may interrupt you for a moment. And he talks about this book, a little book called Way Supposed to Be. And it's poetry and things written by little black children, little Mexican children, land of free, home of the brave. And the teacher made a little compilation of all the things these kids wrote. And he dealt with them. He respected them. And he dealt with them as if they were, as in fact all children are, so in fact all human beings are, some kind of a miracle. And something wonderful happened. And so for me, it's a very tiny book, only 30 pages long. One boy wrote a poem. 16 years old, was in prison. It ended, 4 lines, I never forget. Walk on water, walk on a leaf. Hardest of all is walk in grief. Now, how could you ever forget, just as he could never forget, that little tiny book?